Hello again and welcome back for another video. Underworld's Born Slippy is an alienating collision of clattering beats set against an incessant stream of conscious internal monologue. The song is simply one of the best slices of electronica ever produced. Musically austere in its emotional textures, it becomes nearly unstoppable once Karl Hyde starts endlessly listing all sorts of boys to dramatic effect. Originally, the song was quietly released in 1995 to little fanfare. Then, a year later, its inclusion on the Trainspotting soundtrack propelled it into mainstream clubs and onto endless dance compilations, leading to crowds of boozed up blokes chanting along with the bit that goes, "Lager, lager, lager." What were those cryptic lyrics trying to say, and how did it go on to define a generation? And what about the seldom heard original version? Is it any good? Well, buckle up, because today, we're going to discuss betting on greyhounds, drunkenly navigating Soho, and soundtracking a cult film that would define a generation. This is the story of Born Slippy, 30 years on. Back in the spring of 1995, Underworld were already receiving acclaim from a continuous string of remixes and their third album, Dub No Bass with My Head Man. But to truly understand the brilliance behind Born Slippy, we have to go back to the beginning. Karl Hyde and Rick Smith's earliest work was as an art school collaboration called the Screen Gems. Following this, they would put together their second band. As was the style in the early 80s, this project was a new wave outfit, initially named by just an unpronounceable symbol, which they would later revise to the name Froy-er. This was a decade before Prince did it. Let's just appreciate for a moment the audacity of naming a new, unheard band with a symbol. These days, that would spell instant SEO death. So, roll call. There was Rick, sporting quite the perm, Brian, Carl, the keeper of the beads and rocking quite the perm too, John, and we can't forget Alfie, donning some pretty snazzy beads himself. At this early stage, it was quite clear that the band had unique creative ideas clashing with aspirations of success. Froy-er has been mostly forgotten to time, despite the film soundtrack Vanilla Sky temporarily reviving their excellent single, Doot Doot. After two increasingly experimental albums, Froy-er fizzled out and Underworld MK1 would be born, a kind of funk, rock, synth-pop project. They would put out two records that mostly presented a homogenized sound and image of current musical trends that Karl and Rick thought would bring them success in the late 80s. The band was racking up debt while supporting the Eurythmics on tour. Hyde recalled feeling miserable during this time. Quote, "We'd subvert what we naturally did to fit an idea of what was going to be successful in the charts, and we just weren't very good at it. We realized we were a band trapped in the body of another band. We were denying what we were."
You're far behind your vicious pride. You better come through it.
Underworld MK1 would disband and Rick and Karl would go on hiatus for a while to do some soul searching. As documented in I Am Dog Boy, a combination of tour diaries and an autobiography of the band's failure years, 1990 was a rough year for Underworld. Karl got a day job working in insurance and also worked as a session musician as well as touring member in Debbie Harry's band. We'll add a link to that footage down below. Rick Smith lived off of roughly 120 pounds that whole year. During this time, the advice he received from his wife was to stop trying to be somebody else. She insisted to him, he's got something special. Stick to that and stop trying to copy other acts. So slowly, Rick and Karl would heed those words. They began concentrating on their art design project, Tomato, and started working with fellow Romford resident DJ Darren Emerson and signed to tiny label Junior Boyzone. And so would begin the era of Underworld MK2, producing danceable techno as a trio. The music Rick was composing was more and more becoming influenced by the likes of Philip Glass, Steve Reich, Tangerine Dream, and Kraftwerk. Songs were stretching out over 7, 10, sometimes 20 minutes with these mantra-like repetitious patterns that would slowly and subtly evolve over time. While the music was informed by the dance floor with the input provided by Emerson, this was married with a heavy emphasis on songwriting, texture, and atmosphere, tonally resembling something more like Depeche Mode and New Order. You only have to listen to the choir sound that appears during Dark Train, sounding just a little similar to Blue Monday, to realize that both bands were taking heavy inspiration from Kraftwerk. In this example, their radioactivity track, Uranium. Over top of these epic musical beds, Carl's lyrics were these observations on the life of a city, influenced by Lou Reed's New York album. Most of the words are these third-party observations on humans struggling inside a metropolis, and then reporting back in a stream of conscious, fragmented kind of way. Whether struggling with or simply indulging, Carl's lyrical inspiration came to him as he continually slid into alcoholism. This combination would be used to great success on several of the single releases that would eventually come together to form their first album, Dub No Bass with My Head Man. This debut was met with widespread critical acclaim and strong sales. I still consider Dub No Bass to be their crowning achievement. Although I enjoy their entire discography, this album stands as a classic of 90s genre-blending electronic music, leading the way for other groups a few years on. Eventually, it would come time for Underworld to follow this early promising performance up with a new release. And so, Born Slippy was released on the 1st of May, 1995. As a 2-track 12-inch, a 2-track remix 12-inch, and a 3-track CD single. The original version of Born Slippy was the instrumental A-side. The song that everybody knows is actually the B-side, titled Born Slippy.nuxx. The A-side is one of the best techno instrumentals ever written, and sadly not enough people got to hear it. It features these complex breakbeat drum patterns, layer upon layer of rising, racing synth lines that keep building and building thanks to its circular melody. This is the sound of Underworld channeling Kraftwerk through state-of-the-art electronics. Things keep rising until they hit a huge crescendo. If you've never heard it, pause this video, go check it out. I'll throw in a quick clip, but you really need the full 9-minute journey. The way it reaches these uncharted echelons of mind-warping intensity is just truly something to behold, especially when performed live. On this original release, the second track, Born Slippy.nuxx, was meant to function as a kind of release valve for the blistering intensity of the instrumental version. On the CD, nuxx segs in directly following the blast of the original's beats with its soft pads. The full original version is almost 12 minutes and, like all great Underworld tracks, really takes its time. 40 seconds in, we get probably Carl's most iconic vocal performance. His words are bathed in distortion, phaser, and echo, panning all around the stereo field until out of nowhere, this hammering techno beat comes in just as the tranquil pads disappear. All of a sudden, we are somewhere entirely different. This mechanistic, industrial rhythm continues as Carl undulates his scattershot poetry around it until the beat drops and the pads return. After this brief pause, we're back to the hammering beats, only this time they're given the space and time to continually change over several minutes. Elements pause, hi-hats come in and out, along with various other percussive polyrhythms, until these epic bending arpeggios and slow building pads propel the song to a close. Carl is typically being reluctant to discuss his lyrics. However, he's acknowledged that Born Slippy is basically the only song he'll explain because of how misunderstood it was at the time. His most simplest explanation of it is, quote, "A lad goes looking for more stuff." Expanding on this to Uncut magazine, Carl would describe the song as, quote, "A map of a journey that starts at the ship on Wardour Street, staggers into Tottenham Court Road tube station, and gets on the late night train back to Romford." Eventually, Carl would offer up a more detailed explanation. Speaking on Born Slippy to The Guardian in 2006, Carl would say, quote, "We used to go out drinking in Soho and I ended up in the ship on Wardour Street. All the lyrics were written on that night. A drunk sees the world in fragments and I wanted to recreate that. I was inspired by Lou Reed's New York album and Sam Shepard's Motel Chronicles. I was into flash photography as well, so I was walking around Soho with a notebook and camera, just observing things. In those days, I'd open the book whenever a musical idea inspired me. Rick came up with the rhythm and I started singing over it. The vocals were done in one take. When I lost my place, I'd repeat the same line. That's why it goes, lager, 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 lager." The first time we played it live, people raised their lager cans and I was horrified because I was still deep into alcoholism. It was never meant to be a drinking anthem. It was a cry for help. Now I don't mind. Why Born Slippy? It was a greyhound we won money on. Like its inspirations, Born Slippy.nuxx is ugly and fun and awfully tough to stop. Dance music has rarely been so artistic and enjoyable in the same instance. The song wraps itself around a listener's body and mind, straddling the techno, house, and IDM genres with grace. On this original release, things immediately fade into third track, Born Slippy Telematic, which introduces some nice syncopated rhythms and progressively adds additional elements such as hi-hats, offbeat snares, and finally a 4-to-the-floor kick drum. Eventually, a low bass line and these fifth chords and organ come in, similar to later Underworld single Push Upstairs. Things build and build with additional melodic incidental riffs and crashes. This one stays instrumental, but presents yet another side of Underworld, their funkier, groovier side. Original vinyl 12-inch single. A-side is Born Slippy. B-side, Born Slippy.nuxx. Original remix 12-inch. A-side, Born Slippy Telematic. B-side, Cowgirl Whinger mix. And I don't have the original CD, but that collected all three original Born Slippys. So, that was that, at least for a few months. In the second half of 1995, English director Danny Boyle was working on a new film. Having great taste in music, he had showed off his effectiveness for setting electronic sounds to movie sequences in his well-received debut, Shallow Grave. He also just happened to be a huge fan of Underworld's Dub No Bass with My Head Man, and when it came time to soundtrack his film adaptation of Irvin Welsh's novel Trainspotting, he placed the full album in as temp music. Initially, he had the idea of asking the band if they'd mind if he just used the entire record to soundtrack the film. Boyle and his music supervisor would eventually settle on just 2 tracks. Dark Train, a remix of Dub No Bass opener Dark and Long to soundtrack the scene when Renton was going through withdrawal, and Born Slippy.nuxx for the movie's final moments. In an interview with Q Magazine, Carl explained, "Then we get this call that some geezer called Danny Boyle wants to put the track in the film version of Trainspotting. Myself and Rick weren't part of the druggy culture. We didn't see the association with our music. So we said no to the request as we didn't like the analogy that we thought was being made. That's the last time we've ever said no to Danny Boyle. He convinced us to go to the edit suite and we realized it was the opposite of glorification. It perfectly put the song back into context. The first time we played it live, my heart sank because loads of people were holding cans of lager aloft. The film redressed the balance, gave the song resonance. The Trainspotting soundtrack would go on to huge success, selling several million copies around the world and spawning a Trainspotting 2 soundtrack featuring many of the songs from the film that didn't fit on the original. This huge success was in no small part due to Born Slippy, which was marketed as the soundtrack's single. Playing off this momentum, Born Slippy.nuxx was reissued as a single in the UK on the 1st of July, 1996. It came in a variety of formats, featuring multiple new mixes, and hit number 2 on the UK singles chart. Unlike the original 1995 release, these were commissioned DJ mixes and, in my opinion, less worth your time than the versions on the original single release. Years later, Born Slippy.nuxx would get re-released by Underworld as Born Slippy 2003 to promote their anthology album 1992 to 2002 with a further set of commissioned remixes. And finally, for the 2017 film T2 Trainspotting, Rick Smith created a new version with time-stretched chords titled Slow Slippy. Original CD1 from 1996, Born Slippy.nuxx, the Deep Pan mix, Alex Reese mix, original CD2 single from 1996, Born Slippy.nuxx. It's also got Dark Train from the film Trainspotting on it, Alex Reese mix, original 12-inch single, nothing on the back, Born Slippy.nuxx, Born Slippy.nuxx Darren Price remix, and the Alex Reese mix. Born Slippy 2003 version. (2017) Slow Slippy. And if you're into Easter eggs, don't know if you have a copy of the original CD release, but it's got to be the CD single, not the vinyl, of Dub No Bass. Inside, panels 6 and 7 feature the original lyrics to Born Slippy.nuxx back in 1994, but written in 1993, hiding in plain sight. And if you're into this sort of artwork, you really should seek out Skyscraper, I Love You, the typography book that Carl Hyde put out with John Warwicker from Tomato. If you're an Underworld fan, Skyscraper is like a map of a journey through the streets of New York. You can get lost in here with Carl's words for hours. Highly recommended. Melody Maker named Born Slippy.nuxx the single of the year in December 1996, writing, As a stomping club anthem, it whipped up a shamanic, hedonistic frenzy. Yet the lyrics, culminating in the lager, 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 mega, mega white thing chant, nailed everything about the loaded lads, birds, and booze culture of the mid-90s. Music Week called it an anthem for a generation, while singer Boy George reviewed the Nuxx mix for Select, writing, "Nice lyrics in a ranting, punky style. I like techno records that swoop." Years on in 2022, Pitchfork named it the 20th best song of the 90s. The Guardian named it the most experimental and sonically extreme hit of the 90s, alongside the Chemical Brothers' 1996 single, Setting Sun, and among the weirdest chart hits of all time. Born Slippy and the original 3-track EP is a suite of explorative, complex moods and sounds. At its center, the Nuxx version successfully transitions from subtle and somber to frantic and banging and all the way back again. Much like the film it was inextricably linked to. Without this perfect catalyst of events, it's unlikely Underworld would have had the push necessary to penetrate America, headline festival shows, and have such longevity in electronic music. This is my original Trainspotting CD single. Vinyl pressing. First LP. Second LP. Orange. Trainspotting 2 soundtrack. This came with Underworld's Dark and Long Dark Train mix, among other tracks that were featured in the film but couldn't make it on the first CD. Boyle had a vision and willingness to utilize Underworld's sound. He selected a track that almost transcends the film's popularity, without a doubt becoming Underworld's signature hit and providing newcomers with an entry point to their vast and vivid soundscapes. Born Slippy Nuxx is Underworld's defining anthem, but it's also a defining anthem to an era for those who grew up alongside it. So, that's gonna do it for today. I'm gonna link the original Born Slippy tracks from 1995 down in the comments, along with some of the better live performances of the original as well as the Nuxx version. For further reading on how Underworld embraced their true identity, I highly recommend picking up I Am Dog Boy, the story of how a band stopped being conformist and started becoming weird and found commercial and artistic success by really just being themselves and letting all the rough edges and idiosyncrasies bleed out in the music. If you enjoyed this video, kindly give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing so that you don't miss out on any future videos. What do you think of Born Slippy and of Underworld in general? Have you heard the original single release or just the Nuxx version? Let me know below, as well as if you'd like to see another video on Underworld or any other electronic artists. Thanks for watching. You can see more of my videos right here. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you guys in the next one.